sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Following Jesus, being a Christian, it doesn't make sense. It defies logic. It asks us to go to places we'd rather not go, and to do things we'd rather not do, to think things we'd rather not think. It doesn't make sense. Look at today's epistle from St. Peter. Love everybody. Be kind to one another. Be forgiving. And if somebody's giving you a hard time, give them a blessing in return. Yeah, right. Yeah, sure, I'll do that. How many of you wake up every morning saying, that person who's just making me miserable, today I'm going to give them a blessing. That'll make everything better. Well, no, we don't think that way, do we? Because it just doesn't make sense. Following the Lord, being his disciple, being a Christian, coming to church, it doesn't make sense. Look at today's gospel. It further illustrates this. Here's Jesus now all of a sudden standing on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, ready to preach. Prior to this, he'd been preaching in synagogues, but apparently was no longer welcome because what he was saying didn't make sense either. So he's standing by the shore, and strangely enough, a crowd gathers, and they want to hear him. Well, that doesn't make sense either, but there it is. So Jesus, thinking to himself for a moment, says, well, what shall I do? Oh, I've got it. There's a boat. I'll get in the boat, and I'll have them pull out a little bit so I can address the crowd from the boat. Doesn't ask permission, just does it. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. And Peter, what we know about Peter, says, okay, sure, we'll do that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So Jesus sits in the boat, and he preaches and teaches, and everybody's happy. And then says to Peter, launch out into the deep and lower your nets for a catch. Well, that definitely doesn't make sense. If you're a fisherman in Israel at this time, you know that you do your fishing at night. That's when you catch it, not during the day. In fact, Peter points that out. He says, Lord, we've been at this all night, and we didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, we'll do it. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. If we look at our lives as his followers, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense as well. We have to admit that following him doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't seem natural to us to follow his commandments. It doesn't seem natural to do the things that he says we should do, or to act in the way that he says we should act. It seems very contrary to the way of the world. The way of the world that we live in now teaches us to think for ourselves, to act for ourselves, to do for ourselves, because no one else will do it for us. Especially as Americans. Rugged individualism. I don't need help from anyone. I can handle it myself. I'll do it myself because I would rather not trust anyone anyway. If you want something done right, do it yourself. Okay? That's the American way. Not the gospel way, however. Not the way that Christ teaches. He says, no, let's do it together. And everything in us, everything that from the core of our being, we rebel against that. We would rather do it ourselves. We would rather act on our own behalf, knowing that no one can take care of me but me. That's the way we've been conditioned to learn and to think and to act and to do. I'll do it myself. So how do we make sense of all of this? How do we make sense of the reality of Jesus Christ in our life and what he calls us to and what he beckons us to? We need to pay close attention to him when he says, launch out into the deep. Listen to that. Launch out into the deep. What he's saying is, go a little deeper. Go beyond what you think you know. Go beyond what you expect. Go beyond what you're accustomed to. And go to that place that's unfamiliar, that's uncomfortable, where you don't know anything, where you don't trust anything, where you can't lay hold of anything, go there, because that's where you'll find me. Launch out into the deep. Go to the unfamiliar. Go to the unexpected. Only then do we really discover him. Only then do things in our life begin to make sense. And that's not easy. Peter said, we've been doing this all night. What are you talking about? We've been doing this all night. But he took the chance and went out into the deep, went out into the unexpected, went out to the unknown, and there he caught his fish. Same with us. If we let go, if we trust him instead of ourselves, if we go out into the deep, that's where we'll find him. That's where he'll be, waiting for us, waiting to embrace us, and waiting to tell us who we really are, who he really is. Recently, I went through kind of a dark period in my life where all of a sudden, nothing made sense anymore. Nothing seemed real. I looked at myself and said, you're a fake, you're a phony, you don't mean this, you don't believe this, everything you do, everything you say is a lie. I looked at myself praying and saw somebody trying to pray. Saw somebody trying to conform to an image of what I thought prayer ought to look like. And it really bothered me because I no longer knew who or what I was. And all of a sudden, through his grace and his grace only, it dawned on me that none of that mattered. When you strip away everything and when you look at the reality of your life as it actually is, I discovered all that I have is simply a desire for him. A desire to be close to him, a desire to be near to him, and a desire for ministry. That's what he's given me. That's his gift to me. And that's real. And nobody can take that from me. And if I learn to act and live from that desire, then I'll be okay. And that's the way it is with all of us. When you really cut away everything in your life, all the exteriors and all the busyness and all the things that you have to do and be and so forth, what is it really that you have within you? Nothing except a desire for him. That's what brings you here. That's all any of us have. That's what he plants within us. A desire for him, a desire to know him, a desire to love him, a desire to be close to him, a desire to let him into our lives so that he can direct us toward where we ought to be going. Anything we do or acquaint ourselves with apart from that desire is false and fake and not real, and we don't need to be involved with it. What we need to focus on in our lives is the desire for him that he's given to each of us. Because if we live from that and act from that and move from that, then we'll find ourselves on our way. And all of a sudden, launching out into the deep won't be so frightening. It'll be real and welcoming because that's where we're supposed to go. And that's only when life begins to make sense and all the pieces of our lives fall together into a whole that finally we can begin to understand. I've been at this for 40 years, and I feel like the Karate Kid. And I can hear Mr. Miyagi saying, Miyagi, have hope for you. It's a struggle launching into the deep. We don't know where we're going, but that's what we have to do. And we do have examples, and we do have little things that teach us, what that can be like. I mean, my experience basically was much the same as St. Peter's. When St. Peter finally gets hold of everything that's happened, he says, "Away from me, I'm a sinful man." Because that's what happens. The closer you get to him, the more you realize how unworthy and how faulty and how phony you really are. And that's exactly where he wants us. He wants to be able to strip away all the falsehood and all the illusions that we've patterned ourselves, to be, to strip all that away and to reveal ourselves for who and what we really are. Only then can we discover his love for us and his care for us. So when St. Peter was able to say, "Away from me, I'm a sinful man," that was the most profound moment of his life, because that's the moment where he met Christ. That's the moment when he was finally able to understand, I need this man. Well, that's where we all have to be. To get to that point where we recognize our complete and total and desperate need for him. We don't have anything else when you cut through all the nonsense of our lives. We don't have anything else except a desire and a need for him, because only he can save us. Only he can bring us to where we need to be. Only he can order and set our lives aright and help them make sense. Away from me, I'm a sinful man. We all need to know that sort of experience in our lives. And that's what he brings all of us to. The closer we get to him, the more we realize how faulted we are, and the more we realize how much he's there for us. But then notice, as soon as Peter has this experience, Jesus says to him, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men." You notice what happens there? After all that's happened, Peter's still a fisherman, but now he's just going a different direction. That's what happens with all of us. He takes us as we are, who we are, taking whatever gifts, whatever talents, whatever abilities we have, and it's not so much that he changes us, it's more that he transforms us and enables us to be for him. Peter was a fisherman, remained a fisherman, but was fishing for all different things after he met Jesus. That's the way it is for all of us. Whatever we are, he transforms and makes more perfectly into his image, into his likeness. And that's where we're supposed to be. Now you can say, "I understand that, Father, but that's for the holy people. That's for the good people. It's not for me." Well, think again. I'd like to take a moment and introduce you to one of my favorite New Testament characters. Some of you who have been to Bible study have heard some of this, so bear with me. But the rest of you, I hope you'll hear it. My favorite New Testament character is Rhoda. And you're all, who? Do you know who Rhoda is? We meet Rhoda early on in the book of Acts. And to set the stage, again, it's early in the book of Acts. The church is beginning to undergo some persecution. In fact, in this episode, Peter's in jail. And he's locked up in the dead of night in this jail cell, and all of a sudden the cell is filled with light, and there's an angel telling Peter not to be afraid. And the chains just mysteriously fall from his hands and his feet. The door mysteriously swings open, and Peter walks out, following this angel in a fog. And as they're leaving the prison, all the doors open by themselves. The guards appear to be sleeping. Peter doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know if he's awake or if he's dreaming. And all of a sudden the fog lifts and he finds himself at John Mark's house. Oh, I know where I am. So he goes up to the door and he knocks. And the door is opened, it said, by a young woman named Rhoda. So Rhoda opens the door and she sees that it's Peter standing there, and she knows who he is. And she's so excited, she runs off to tell the others, Peter's here, he's at the door. And they said, "Oh, you're crazy, that's his ghost," or whatever. "That's not Peter." No, really it is, it's Peter. But poor old Rhoda forgot something. She forgot to open the door. So excited that Peter was there, she forgot to open the door. So when the others are finally convinced that she's telling the truth and they go to the door, there's poor old Peter still at the door knocking. And they let him in. So that's Rhoda, and she's one of my favorites. Here's why. We don't know anything about her. Apparently she didn't preach to the masses. She didn't heal the sick. She didn't raise the dead. She didn't convert thousands of people with a sermon. She didn't do anything special. The only thing we know about her is that she was so excited about what God was doing for the church, she forgot to open the door. But 2,000 years later, she's remembered by name, in the church's book, in the New Testament. 2,000 years later, we still know her name because Rhoda mattered. She mattered. To the early church, to the original Christian community, she mattered. Everyone mattered. They were just an odd collection of people from all different kinds of walks of life who under normal circumstances would have had nothing to do with one another. But there they were, following this strange man, embracing these strange practices, and they knew everyone mattered. If we've lost anything from the days of the early church, that's what we've lost. The realization that everyone matters, that everyone has something to say, that everyone has something to give and something to be. That's what we've lost. Think about it. We're not a whole lot different than those original Christians. We're a group of people who live far away from each other, from all different walks of life, and if it wasn't for having this place in common, we probably wouldn't know each other or have much to do with each other. But here we are because each of us matters. And that's what we have to discover. And that's when Christ leads us to, when he tells us to go out into the deep. He teaches us that, first of all, I matter, and everyone around me matters. And we're all here together for a reason, and we matter. Now, look at Rhoda. She didn't do anything special. She didn't do anything magnificent. She didn't build churches. She didn't do anything except forget to open a door. But we remember her 2,000 years later. She matters. We all do. And that's what Christ tells us this day and every day. Launch out into the deep. Go beyond what you know. Go beyond what you expect. Go beyond to the place where you can find me and discover that you matter and that everyone matters. Launch out into the deep and no longer be afraid.